Because basically, if you think about it, overbearing parents are kind of bullies. And so your parents that are bullies are basically teaching you how to get bullied. Let's talk about behaviors you'll have now as an adult that show that you may have had overbearing parents growing up. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Missy, and on this channel we get to the root of the issue and learn how to heal it and deal. So if that's your thing, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I would love for you to be a part of the fam. And if you already are a subscriber, you know I appreciate you so much. Let's get into today's video. So an overbearing parent is a parent that exerts excessive control and influence over a child's life, often to the point where they undermine their child's autonomy and their development. You'll know you had an overbearing parent if you had a parent that micromanaged. So they closely monitored and they directed every choice in your life, you know, your extracurricular activities, the things you did, maybe even the friends you had and the people you hung out with. They would have high expectations. They would set unrealistic expectations for you, and it puts a lot of pressure on you to meet those expectations. There's a lack of autonomy for you as a child. So the parent makes decisions for you rather than allowing you to make your own choices, thereby stifling you as a child's independence and critical thinking, control and domination. So there's often guilt tripping, manipulation, fear, or threats to try to control you to do what they want. Invasion of privacy. So there wasn't allowed to be a lot of boundaries, and they may have done things like not letting you keep the door closed or reading all your text messages, your emails, invading your conversations, using emotional manipulation. So they may have made you feel like you were responsible for their happiness or for their sadness. And they may often have made you feel like you were an extension of them rather than you being your own individual self. So those are some things that will show you that you may have had an overbearing parent. Now, what are the side effects of these behaviors of the parents? What does it do to you? You will notice you may now have a difficulty making decisions. You had parents that made the decisions for you, and it didn't allow you to have a say or a sense of self. You, as a child, and may even now, feel like your parents have to okay your decisions out of fear of doing the wrong thing, or you don't know what to do, and you feel like only your parents will truly know. And this leads to needing constant approval. You need approval from your parents that what you're doing is correct, or that you're doing the right thing in their eyes out of the fear of messing up, or the fear of something really bad happening, or the fear of being wrong. You have little faith in yourself, so now you struggle with trusting in yourself, struggle with independence, struggle with confidence in yourself. You fear judgment, and you need not only even your parents' approval, but you may need the people you love's approval as well. And if you can't get your parents' approval, then you may not do that thing, or you will seek the approval of the people in your inner circle and to get the okay. This leads to a dependency on your parents or people that are similar to your parents. And you have a dependency on what they're saying, what they're thinking, their opinions, having them tell you what's okay and what's not okay, telling you what's right and what's wrong. They basically are your moral compass. You don't feel like you have formed your own moral compass. The next is sensitive to criticism. Overbearing parents often try to control their kids. They try to control what you do with your life and who you are. These parents will critique you and every part of you because they want you to be the carbon copy of what they imagine in their mind. They can be pretty harsh, and they can make you feel like you're never good enough, and that causes a wound inside of you, which your ego then will try to protect you from. Now, in adulthood, anytime someone criticizes you, you may get really defensive, or you may shut down, or you may act out of your ego and then over-exaggerate your talents to other people, or you may try to avoid criticism at all costs. You may silence people or dismiss them when they start to get too critical, or you may even go as far as to people please to avoid ever getting criticized. You will try to be what you think everyone wants you to be, so that way you can never truly get criticized or deal with any type of punishment or abandonment or negative consequences that you've had to deal with like your parents have put on you when you were a child. You just overall don't take criticism well, and you take things very personally. Another thing is chronic anxiety and stress. In your upbringing, an overbearing parent puts a lot of stress on a child, cause you to be stressed about things that you shouldn't be stressed about, like having the best grades or being the best looking or being the most liked. These high expectations and the hyperfixation on these things cause great anxiety. You will then notice in your childhood and throughout your life, you will have anxiety about not being good enough, about people not liking you, about your work, have anxiety that you're not doing enough, have anxiety about your relationships, have anxiety that about whether you are well liked or not. You may have anxiety about getting in trouble with people or with work. You may have anxiety about failing. You may have anxiety about being homeless or doing the wrong thing. This causes you to fear trying new things or fear taking risks. And this is because that fear of failure, and then you have a really hard time leveling up in life, and you may feel like you're stagnant or you're stuck. Another thing is being a perfectionist. When you have overbearing parents, they make you feel like you have to be perfect, and that is the only way you will be praised or that your parents will accept you in any type of ways, that you have to do things or do the exact thing that they had asked and be the perfect child, be the best behaved, be the best dressed, whatever it is. You have to be this perfect person and be the best at whatever they expect you to be the best at. And so because of this will cause you to constantly feel like you have to be perfect in everything you attempt in life, and it can cause you to not be able to enjoy things or move forward with things, because there's always this obsession about being perfect at things, and failing is not an option. And it takes a joy out of doing things because you're always obsessed about being the best or doing it correctly. This then causes you to give up on things that you actually really do like, but you don't feel like you're good enough at, or that your parents would regularly criticize you on. The next is you may struggle with a lot of guilt and shame, and guilt and shame may be that moral compass that you use to guide your decisions. So in your upbringing, your parents will most likely have used guilt and shame to control you. They may have guilt you for trying to assert independence. There's this constant feeling of needing to be loyal to their parents, and this fear of disappointing their parents. And they've seen, oh, my parents never steered me wrong. I'm where I am because of my parents today, so I have to listen to them. And there's this constant guilt of, if you try to do things away from your parents, that you are doing something bad or wrong, especially because they enforce that a lot in your childhood. You may experience a lot of shame over your perceived failures, and that's because you were made to feel like you weren't allowed to fail in any aspect of your life. You weren't allowed to make mistakes. And when you do mess up or make a mistake, you immediately take it in and think that you are flawed or you are bad, and you are an inadequate human. You not only feel guilt for setting boundaries with your parents, but you feel guilt with setting boundaries in any setting. That's because you were taught that having boundaries is disrespectful, or it's selfish, or it's wrong, and you're wronging your parents by doing that. Overbearing parents often instill a sense of obligation and responsibility towards family, and this makes it difficult for you as a child to prioritize your own needs. So you will feel really guilty if you do have to say no, or you want to say no, and you'll feel like you're wrong or you're bad for doing that. You may feel shame for seeking help. So with your overbearing parents, they made you feel a sense of helplessness where you have to do things on your own, and it is bad for you to ask for support or ask for help from others, and that you can't depend on your parents for anything, to ask them for any type of support. So then you feel that shame, and you feel like you have to hide everything, and you can't seek out support or help. You were made to feel like you should be able to handle everything on your own, and if you don't, you're an embarrassment. And needing help, you were brought up to feel like that is a sign of weakness. So you will feel ashamed for needing support or any type of help. And this can hurt your ability to be vulnerable with other people. Vulnerability could be seen as shameful, or feeling any type of uncomfortable negative emotions. That's also could be seen as negative or shameful, and so you will hide any emotions that you have. You also may experience guilt and shame because you can't attend to everyone's needs all the time, like you were expected to attend to your parents' needs. So you will feel like a constant failure because you have such high expectations of yourself to attend to everybody. And like we had mentioned earlier, with emotional manipulation, you may have been brought up to feel like you're responsible for your parents' happiness or disappointment or sadness, whatever it is. They may have made you feel like you're responsible for those emotions, and so then you will constantly feel that shame if you are not to the standards of what you believe you should be up to. The next one is identity issues and a negative view of yourself. Your parents most likely were not very kind to you in the way that they spoke. There may have been moments, but majority of the time it was probably pretty unkind. And what happens when we hear a lot of unkind language is it then becomes our own voice, and it's something that we hear constantly in our minds. It becomes your inner voice. All of these negative sayings, the negative things you heard, that's your inner voice now. So now you have a constant critic inside your mind. So what's that going to do? It's going to create a negative, false view of yourself, of you thinking you're all these bad things or these bad qualities and traits that your parent has said to you. And this leads to identity loss because you're just hearing and seeing it from your parents' negative, false perception of telling you of who you are constantly, that you weren't able to really form your own identity and your own sense of self. You've lost yourself. And you weren't really encouraged to be who you are, and you weren't uplifted. And so because of that, you will be confused because you'll keep thinking you're all these negative traits that they've told you, but it doesn't match up because you aren't really those things. No one is just a bunch of bad qualities. There's good qualities about yourself that were not uplifted and encouraged, and so that is missing. And so who you feel you are and who you were made to believe you are don't match up. And so then you will feel this loss of a sense of self, and you'll just in general just feel really low and bad about yourself, and you just never feel good enough or worthy. The next thing is avoidance of conflict. In your upbringing, your parents most likely have punished you if you tried to have any say, or if you disobeyed anything they had to say, and so you never really felt like you had a say. Or if you did anything against your parents, or if you created any type of conflict, you may have seen that it results in some sort of punishment or abandonment from your parent. So then you take this with you into your other relationships and see, okay, if I disagree with other people, if I have any type of conflict, if I say no to others, then it's going to create some type of negative situation, a punishment or an abandonment. So I'm going to avoid it at all costs. And you may avoid conflict even if it would be beneficial, but you don't see it as such, as because you've never been really given the example or seen how a disagreement can result in something positive and something that can help you move forward in your dynamics, and also just allow you to release it and bring awareness to the problem so something can be done about it. You've been made to feel helpless. You were taught to just avoid problems, silence yourself, and to just cruise through life. Otherwise, something bad will happen, and you just want to avoid any of those bad things. You crave your parents' validation very badly, as all of us children do. And so with all of that lack of validation, you will also crave other people and their validation going into your adulthood. And the last thing is struggle establishing and asserting boundaries. Now, as we had talked about, in your upbringing, you weren't allowed to say no or have your own boundaries, and if you tried to, you were made to feel like it was selfish or wrong and it was against your parents, and you weren't supposed to do that. Now, in your other relationships, you will have a hard time being able to identify your boundaries, and boundaries are there to keep us feeling safe and for us to let people know, like, hey, this is how I expect to be treated. So you will deal with a lot of mistreatment in a lot of different areas of your life, and you still will deal with the mistreatment of your parents as well. And this can cause you to be stuck in unfortunate situations. You may deal with manipulation, you may deal with emotional abuse because of the lack of being able to assert your boundaries. You may deal with bullies in like the workforce or in your friend group. You may feel like you're pushed around a lot, and you try to avoid those conflicts or dealing with anything, and you don't realize that you can say no, or that you can say, hey, I don't tolerate this. You may feel like you have to just tolerate these things and be nice, or it will cause you to maybe be passive aggressive or just avoid these people altogether. And this can make you a target, because basically, if you think about it, overbearing parents are kind of bullies. And so your parents that are bullies are basically teaching you how to get bullied in life. So you don't learn these skills of how to set boundaries, and that boundaries are a normal functioning part of life, and every single person is entitled to boundaries. And so you don't have this life skill, and you don't know how to practice it. And like I said, this will affect your ability to have relationships. All these things will affect your ability to have healthy relationships with other adults, how to have healthy friendships, how to have healthy romantic relationships. You'll be confused about what love is, what it means to be genuinely taken care of, what it means to have someone to genuinely love you and not judge you. Now, what you'll need to do now as an adult is unlearn a lot of these behaviors, recognize and understand your parents are bullies. Even if they don't understand what they're doing, or they did their best, whatever their excuse is, that's their excuse. But it's not, whatever their reasoning is, that's their reasoning and the understanding, but that's not an excuse for their behavior. So you have to hold them accountable in your mind and understand you were wronged, and the things you learned were wrong. You have to build up your confidence. You have to set boundaries. You have to learn what healthy relationships are. You have to learn how to love yourself and identify who you are. You have to be able to identify bullying and bad behavior, and when people are mistreating you. You have to learn about manipulation. You have to learn all these different things. And understand you are enough no matter what, and you are worth love. And I have a ton of videos on self-love and where you can start, which I will leave right here. So what do you guys think? Leave it all in the comments below, and please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share with someone that you think may need it. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye guys. What do overbearing parents look like? So an overbearing